We welcome you to Miles Chapel Baptist Church, located at 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina, where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain, preaching a powerful message that will definitely bless your heart and soul. The church vision is impacting, transforming, and empowering people's lives for victorious living. Yes, this church designed for you and mine, where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain, preaching a powerful message every Sunday morning. Yes, the church location is 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina. The telephone number for prayer, information, or directions is 578-1450. Make sure you come out to this awesome church where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain of Miles Chapel Baptist Church, located again at 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina. Now get ready for a heavy word of God from Pastor Scotty Terrain. Get ready for the word.
Bibles, let's turn today to the book of Joshua. Book of Joshua, the first chapter. Book of Joshua, the first chapter. Book of Joshua, the first chapter, beginning at the first verse. Have it? All right. Joshua, first chapter, first verse begins. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, and you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to you, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I will give you, as I said to Moses, for the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Can I read that again? No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Here it is. Be strong and of good courage. For to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Here it is again. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Amen. I want to talk from share from a thought this morning. The faithfulness of God. Even as we come to celebrate another homecoming, and this afternoon celebrating 99 years of ministry that is birthed out of this place, it would have to be a faithful God that has kept us. Amen? Amen. So we want to talk about the faithfulness of God. So as we come, we're celebrating today, and we come to celebrate the faithfulness of God and to thank him for all he's done, is doing, and has promised to do. Now, the homecoming celebration is a Baptist tradition with roots primarily in the South. It's a celebration of memories past and a celebration of new beginnings. It's a celebration of God's faithfulness through our past and anticipation of the fulfillment of the promises that he has made to each of us. And each year, many churches celebrate memories of the past through homecoming. Those persons who may have migrated away are now coming back to fellowship in service, and it's called homecoming. Now there has been a transition, and not so much are people returning to the area, but now we have the opportunity to fellowship with our brothers and sisters who may locally be at another church who decide to come over because they have ties to this church or whatever church is having the homecoming service. So you have to understand that while it has been a practice that has been long in happening, it has changed a little. So we come today to celebrate this homecoming, this homecoming, and in coming home we see the faithfulness of God. Yes. And as we look at this text, we also see the faithfulness of God as Joshua was chosen by God through Moses to complete the work of leading Israel into the promised land. Yes. God had made a promise over 400 years earlier to Abraham that his descendants would receive the land, that they would receive the land that years before he had promised to Abraham. They would receive this land as an inheritance and as a homeland. Time had gone by, and Abraham's grandson Jacob went to Egypt with his family, including Joseph and his sons, and they only numbered about 70, the word teaches us. However, because of God's blessing, they began to multiply. They began to multiply, and they multiplied to the point where it was so many of them that the Egyptians became frightened. I said, wait a minute now, with so many of them, they may take over. So what they did was they put them in slavery. They enslaved them. Yes. But get this, y'all, even while in captivity, they multiplied. Even while in captivity, they grew. Can I help you wherever you are, whatever your challenge is, whatever you're facing this morning? Understand that, while the enemy may have his hand in your life, while the enemy may be touching things in your life, understand that you can grow, you can multiply where you are. Too many of us are standing and we're waiting to get somewhere. We're waiting for this to happen. We're waiting to conquer that. We're waiting to get over here before we begin to give God our all and be multiplied. But I declare unto you, if you extend to him all that you are right now, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to show up and say, Lord, I'm yours. Everything I am, everything I've got, I'm yours. He'll use you and you'll grow where you are. Taskmasters had made their work hard, but they cried out to God. And although they were crying out to God, it seemed that he was so far away. Anybody ever been there? You crying out to God, and it seems like he's not hearing you. You can't get an answer. You can't hear anything. Usually when you can't hear anything, it's just a test. Some of us remember back in our school days. I'm giving us time to get there. Teacher would talk all week long, write all week long, tell you, answer questions all week long. But when Friday came and it was test time, had nothing to say. Sometimes that's what's going on in our lives because he's already instructed us. He's already told us. And so when we get to a place we can't hear, we just have to operate in what it is he's already said. It's already said. So now he sends him a deliverer called Moses, who through the hand of God has brought the children of Israel out of bondage. Moses was God's man. And he brings them out and he gives them the laws of God. But yet even Moses grew discouraged with his people. They constantly seem to fall into unbelief and disobedience toward God, even to the point of desiring to stone Moses and go back to Egypt. Oh, man, that had to hurt. You know, you're leading and you're giving and you're loving. You ever loved anybody and then they turn? Okay, don't raise your hand. Just look straight forward. They turned on you. And they walked in such disbelief until they spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Wandering in the wilderness. But the text that we talked about Wednesday night said that even in Deuteronomy 8, even these 40 years, your clothes didn't wear out. Even this 40 years, your feet didn't. Come on, we walking around in the desert, your feet didn't swell. And even while it seemed that God may have been far away, sometimes we miss the stuff that's really happening, how he's really taking care of us, how he's really covering us. He's faithful. That speaks to one of our favorite hymns. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. It was a hymn that was written by Thomas Chisholm. He didn't write the hymn because something great or something miraculous had happened in his life. No, rather he wrote it because he looked back after spending time in his life, and he realized that even in the times that he thought God had left him, had abandoned him, God was really there carrying him, and he understood at the end of his life that God had been faithful all the way. That's why we need to be able to learn from other folk. We shouldn't have to live our full lives and be able to look back and see that God is faithful. But when we talk to our senior members and they begin to share all that God has brought them through, when we begin to talk to some of our deacons and they begin to share their testimonies, we ought to understand that God is not a respecter of person. And if he did it for them, he'll do it for us. He is a faithful God. It's important that we see the faithfulness of God in receiving the promises of God. Moses is now, the text says Moses is dead. Now, some folk probably cried because they thought that was the end. He's gone, but just because Moses is dead does not mean the plans of God are dead. So what I'm trying to tell you is just because he, she, they left you doesn't mean the plan of God for your life is over. It just means it's operating forward without who left. Come on. Sometimes we get tied to people, and we ought to love people. We ought to embrace people, but sometimes God is trying to move people out of our lives, and we're trying to hold on. So he gives them three assurances, and I believe that every believer needs to be aware of these assurances so they can help us in receiving the promises that have been given to us. The first thing is God is faithful in his promise. God is faithful in his promise. Genesis 17:8 says, "And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." A promise. He gives them a promise that he's going to give them the land, and he says, for an everlasting possession. So that tells me that while I may have to fight, it's going to remain in my possession. While I may have to guard it, it shall remain in my possession, because he said everlasting possession. A promise. What is a promise? The dictionary defines it as a declaration that one will do or refrain from doing something specified. The word promise comes from a Latin word that means to set forth. God set forth what he will and will not do. He's made a promise. He had told Abraham that he and his descendants would receive this land of Canaan as an inheritance. And even though 400 years had passed, the promise of God was still real and still genuine. See, that's the problem. One of the challenges that we as the church face is we hear the promise, but when the promise does not materialize immediately, we throw up our hands thinking that God has given up on us. But I need you to understand that if he spoke it, it shall come to pass. We have to walk in faithfulness and know that he is faithful when we are faithless.
All right. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
That's why their clothes didn't wear out. That's why their feet didn't swell, because he's faithful when we are faithless. That's why he showed up and blessed you. He showed up and healed you, because he's faithful when we are faithless. We find Joshua in chapter 1. God spoke to Joshua and told him that Moses is dead. Then he tells him to arise, get up, cross over the Jordan to the land that I'm giving you. We know according to Deuteronomy 34:8 that Israel mourned for him 30 days. Now I imagine there were many among the Israelites who felt like everything was lost. Everything was over. Moses is gone. What we gonna do? We out here in the desert. Can't find our way back. Don't know what's going on. I'm sure there were some folk who were out there that were confused. But I need you to understand that God never takes his eyes off of us. God knows where we are, and he knows what it is that we need. He spoke and told them to continue, and he restates the promise that he made to Abraham some 400 years before. He reminds Joshua of a very important truth that we too need to be reminded of, that his work, his promise is dependent upon him and not us. He just uses us. We are vessels. We are used of him, but the promises generate from him and not us. He reminds Joshua that he is the blesser. In verse 2, God says, to the land which I do give to them. Verse 3, God says, that I have given unto you. He wants Joshua to see that he is the giver. Not Moses, but God is the giver. And the gift does not change because Moses is off the scene, because a promise has been spoken. And if you've ever heard a promise, that ought to excite you, because sometimes when we look at our lives, our reality does not match what our promise has said. We can't see anything, nothing in our life looks like the promise. But that ought to excite you, because that's where he starts lining things up. He doesn't put you in a place where you can figure it out, where you can see it. But he puts you in a place where you got to walk by faith and not by sight. When you got to call on the name of Jesus because you don't know which way to turn. When you got to say, Lord, if you don't help me, I'm not going to make it. And he shows up every time. Every time. Every time. God is faithful to his promise. But second, I need you to understand, God is faithful in his presence. God is faithful in his presence. Israel knew that God was with Moses. Moses' face was literally, it shone such that he had to wear a veil over it when he came out of the presence of God. They knew he had a relationship. They knew he had been in the presence of God. There was no doubt that Joshua now had a heavy responsibility laid on his shoulders to be the leader of all these people. And not only to be a leader, but check this out. Now, he was Moses' assistant. So every time the people started tripping, he knew. Every time things went awry, he saw it. You calling me to lead these folk?
I know that's right.
The ones that almost ran Moses crazy? Huh? He put him in a place where he could see, where he could feel, where he could have to deal with what his promise was. But then he calls him out and sets him up front and says, now Moses is dead. It's time for you to move forward. And anybody that's ever been in any kind of leadership will testify to the fact that if he had allowed what he saw to dictate how he led, he would have been in a world of trouble. But you got to lead in spite of what you see. You got to lead on what you heard. Yeah. We know. We're like Joshua. We know the way is difficult. We know life is not easy. Job 14:1 confirmed that when it said man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. We know that we have opposition. We know that we have trouble. We know that we have trial. We know that we have hardship. We know all of that. But what I'm excited about is we know that when God shows up, something's got to shift. I don't care what's happening. I don't care how I feel. When God shows up, there's a shift in the room. When God shows up, his presence begins to minister to us, and it takes us from where we are to where he's called us to be. When his presence comes in, There's some things that have to get up and get out. There's some things that have to give way. There's some things that have to move over, because that's our prayer every Sunday morning, that the Lord would allow his spirit to come into the house and throw his weight around such that minds and lives would be changed. We know we have challenges, but I tell you, if you can get your challenge in the presence of God, something's got to give. It's got to give. No, the God reassures Joshua twice, not just once, but twice, that he would be with him. God told him in verse 5 and then again in 9 that he would be with him. There are two things I want us to note. The first thing is the strength of God's assurance. God told him in verse 5, as I was with Moses, so will I be with you. I'll not leave you. I won't forsake you. There are two words I want us to look at in the Hebrew. The first is rapha, to be feeble, slack or relaxed, or to abandon. It is translated as leave or fail. God is telling Joshua, I'm not going to fail you. I'm not going to leave you. My eye will always be on you. You will always be the center of my attention. God is not slack, nor does he relax when it comes to us. I don't care what's going on in your life. He's not relaxed. He understands. He knows he's in control. That's why he's not running around panicking like we do. He's in control, so he doesn't have to act like humans act. But he's not slack. He's not going to leave you out there. He's not going to abandon you. I shared Wednesday night, when I was in the world, I used to like the club. I was a clubber. I liked to dance. And we were 17, 18, 19, maybe 20. When you'd always get together with the fellas and go out. But you never went out in your own area. You know what I'm saying? You always went somewhere else. Lord, what's that? Country Palace. Oh, see? Yeah. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So if we were from Hillsboro, we didn't want to go out in Hillsboro. We're going to Yanceyville, to the Country Palace. Or we're going to Roxborough to the Bucket of Blood. Let it go. That's another sermon, and it wasn't nothing good. But when you get there, the rule was this. Because you knew generally somebody's going to get into something. Either they're doing something they have no business, talking to somebody and have no business, talking to some girl who had a boyfriend. Y'all know what. Y'all know. The rule was, if you get in this car, something jumps off, we all in. You got to fight with them. We ain't discussing, am I right, am I wrong? You got to fight. We get in the car, we'll fight each other, but we gon'. Y'all with me? Okay, talk to me, Dwight, because they acting like they don't know what I'm talking about. But there was always one joker that says, I'm with you. I'm all in. I got your back. Yeah, man, let's jump off. I'm ready. And something snap off, and you. And whenever you finally made your way back to the car with everybody else, he leaning on the car like, where y'all been? Where y'all? Because he's left you out there. Because he relaxed. He let it go. But I'm mighty glad we serve a God who doesn't relax. He's going to show up on your behalf. If he says he's got your back, he's got your back. He's going to cover you. Second word in Hebrew is azab. It's to leave, lose, forsake, or neglect. It's translated as forsake. God is telling Joshua that I'm not going to lose you. I'm not going to forsake you. The promises that I made are yea and amen. All you got to do is stand firm on the word. God's presence is all around us, even through bad times, y'all. Don't think because you hit a little rough spot in the road that God has walked away and thrown his hands up on your life. No. It caught you by surprise. He knew it was coming. God is faithful to take care of us. Yeah. And it's reiterated in Hebrews 13:5b portion that says, again, I'll never leave thee nor forsake thee. He is a God who is faithful. Secondly, the scope of God's assurance, the scope of his assurance. Verse 9, God tells Joshua that he will be with him whithersoever thou goest. Wherever you go. The Hebrew word here is yelak, which literally means to go or to walk. In other words, wherever your feet are, wherever you step, God is saying, I'm right there. May I tell you that there have never been a time in your life that God has not been there? From moment to moment, from the first breath to the first day of school, through college, through whatever you have gone through in your life, God has always been by your side. So he's telling Joshua, as he is telling us today, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of your circumstances, I'm not going to take my eye off you. I'm bound to you. Every step in your, no, I'm not just bound to you, but I'm bound to every step in your life. Every step you make, every decision you make, everything that's going on. That's why we can receive our inheritance, because he's faithful like that. One of the challenges that we face is the fact that we seek God in what we call big decisions, and we just go ahead and make the call in the small stuff. But if we really want to walk in all that God has for us, we need to commit everything to him. So God is faithful to his promise. God is faithful in his presence. But my last point is God is faithful to his precepts. Verse 7, God told Joshua to be strong and be courageous, to observe and to keep the law. Yes, God's faithfulness is seen in his promises, his presence, and also in his precepts. God expected Joshua to walk in his word and to make his way in his law, to live it by his law. Now we understand now in the Old Testament they were under the law and we're now under grace, but we've got to walk by his word. Our decisions have to be governed by his word. The way we live have to be governed by his word. We can't live any kind of way Monday through Saturday, show up for a 2-hour church service on Sunday and think everything in our life is about to turn around. No, you've got to sell out. Often wonder what would happen to us, and I said us, if God cared for us the way we serve him. So I ain't got much to give him. I give him my praise, I give him honor, I give him glory, but he gives me breath to breathe, y'all. Gives me health. In the morning, I know the alarm clock or either the phone may ring and my eyes come open, but it really wasn't that woke me up. It was the hand of the Lord who wakes us, and not only does he give us a new day, but he gives us new mercies. I'm not concerned did I mess up too much yesterday. He woke me up today. I got another chance to keep moving forward. He does so much he cares for our family. Our children who are in school spend more time away from home than they do at home. We can't take care of them. We don't see them. They're not in our presence, but because we serve a faithful God, he shows up and he takes care of families. He takes care of us on jobs. He just does whatever needs to be done in our lives. So it's my time to tell you that we as God's people, as we serve a faithful God, we have to become a faithful people. We've got to constantly go to the Lord in prayer. We've got to constantly call his name. We've got to give to him the just and the due praise that is due him. We've got to continue to lift him up, that men in the world might see him living in us. We're just examples to be used. He just wants to use us as walking billboards. So when folks see us and they know the challenges that we're dealing with, but our face doesn't show what we're going through, they begin to look and say, how in the world did you go through that? I'm glad you asked. There's a man called Jesus, and when I committed my life to him, he came into my life and everything seemed to change. No, I didn't stop doing what I should have stopped doing, but because he was faithful when I was faithless, he kept on working with me. Is there anybody here? The Lord keeps working with you. Yeah, you may not be what you're supposed to be, but you sure ain't what you used to be. He keeps working with us. He keeps giving us an opportunity. He keeps giving us a chance. He is a faithful God. And we can come here today and celebrate homegoing and 99 years of ministry simply because our God is faithful. It wasn't the preachers. It wasn't the deacons. It wasn't the choirs. Wasn't the pastors. Wasn't the congregation. But it's God who's faithful. Because when you look at the scenario, over 99 years, the pastor has changed. Over 99 years, the choir has changed. Over 99 years, the congregation has changed. Well, tell me, people, what is it that remains the same? The God that we serve keeps on showing up. The God that we serve keeps on making a way. The God that we serve.
Better preach it. Yay. Lord have mercy. Hallelujah.
He's faithful. God is faithful. Hey, I'm done. I'm done. He's faithful. And that's what somebody needed to hear. Where you are right now, you can't see your way. You can't fix your way. You can't call nobody. You've been calling folk, and you can't even get to who you usually can get to every day. I need you to understand he's faithful. Sometimes God has to move us to a place that he's all we have for us to realize he's really all we need. Let's rest on our feet.
Chapel Baptist Church, located at 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina, where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain, preaching a powerful message that will definitely bless your heart and soul. The church vision is impacting, transforming, and empowering people's lives for victorious living. Yes, this church designed for you in mind, where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain, preaching a powerful message every Sunday morning. Yes, the church location is 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina. The telephone number for prayer, information, or directions is 578-1450. Make sure you come out to this awesome church where the pastor is Pastor Scotty Terrain of Miles Chapel Baptist Church, located again at 3911 Dickey Mill Road in Mebane, North Carolina. Now, thank you so much for watching, and may God continue to richly bless you.